So I want to use a green pen to go over this reflection. We are also going to grab just this one, and we're going to write, or we're first going to highlight monthly reflection. And even though I know it comes at the end of June, I just like to do a little like June text right here. Okay. So let's talk about your monthly reflection. First, you have 8 set of questions here. Now, the first 4 are going to focus on you and how this month went. And the last 4 are going to focus on your goals planning. So taking the time to reset and do some journaling about this past month, so you can also gear up for the month ahead. Let me just take a quick sip of water. Okay. So for the monthly reflection, the first question is going to be, in general, how did you feel? So when it comes to answering this question, I have some different prompts that I want you to think of. So it's going to be, what emotions showed up most often? You are going to take a look back through your weekly pages, take a look at your accountability trackers, and you're going to see, okay, well, if you are really focusing on your mood as well, I want you to note that in any patterns. Note what emotions came up for you most frequently. I also want you to think about if there were moments when you felt proud, content, or at peace, because it's so easily, I've heard from a lot of you on here, like when you do journaling, you tend to focus on the negative, but I really want us all to also shift and find that balance, because it's so important that you are recognizing what did go well this month. So even if you weren't always feeling your highest energy, maybe you're really proud of yourself because you showed up on tough days and you felt yourself feeling more present and at peace than ever before. I also want you to ask yourself if there was anything that helped you feel that groundness or that support that you just described. So honing in on the why did you feel this way, so in the future you can try to recreate that. And so the last one I also wanted you to take a look would be, how did your emotional state reflect your priorities or growth? That's a little bit of a trickier portion with this one. And so it's tapping into the how did you feel affect the different parts of your life? So let's go over an example answer. But as I'm doing this, I also want you guys to write one word you would describe to use how you felt this month. Okay, so let me know one word that you would use to describe how you felt. For me, I would say it was a mix of productivity and focus. So I'm going to start by saying, let's see, this month, and this is also how you guys can go about using this in your own life. Clarity, that's a really big word. That's so important. Thank you for telling me. Let's say, for instance, you felt a quiet kind of progress. You showed up even on tough days. How did you show up? I want you to ask one more question when you're answering these. So think about each sentence as like, okay, so I showed up, like I just said, with I showed up even on tough days, but in what sense? Maybe you showed up with extra determination. So add that I showed up with extra determination, even on days when I felt like I was in low power mode. There were moments that you paused to check in with yourself and you didn't just brush anything off. You really approached everything full force. Or let's say you didn't sweep anything under the rug. You communicated well. And gave everything your best. Or let's say you gave everything as much as you could. Because I think that's an important distinction in this, is that you're not going to show up every single day giving 120%. But as long as you are giving, like let's say you only have 75% to give that day. If you give your 75%, that is still giving it everything you can. And then I also wanted to let you guys know that you can feel multiple things at once. It's the part of this question is noticing any movement in your emotions rather than just the highs, okay? So not just the lows, not just the highs. Let's notice the overall shift in the direction of our feelings. And then I also wanted to get to question number 2. Now, it's important to identify what your favorite moments were and why. So when you're going about this, take a look back at your favorite moments tracker and think, okay, what made me smile, what made me laugh, and what made me feel fully alive? Were there any surprises or small wins? It's important to think about the feeling behind the moment, not just that a specific event itself. Okay, so maybe you were laughing with a friend so hard that you cried. That is a great reminder of how fulfilling joy can be. Maybe you want more of that next month, more connection, more play, because it's easy to forget that joy is also productive. Okay, so one thing that this reminds me of is the positive affirmation that we chose, which is sometimes the work is resting. Sometimes the work is joy too. So what was everyone's favorite moment this month for themselves? Or it was at least one. You can list as many as you want, but list one for me. I would say for me, it would be, I remember just meeting up with a friend and we laughed so hard that day. And I hadn't laughed that much in a while. And it was just such a good feeling. Building on relationships I thought were surface level. That's incredible, Sonia. That's a fabulous answer. Can I ask how you did that? One-on-one time, real conversation, not around groups. One-on-one time is so important. That is a huge growth opportunity, Sonia. I'm so proud to hear that. I would say that also kind of helps answer, I feel like, a little bit of the next question, which is what did you learn? So for you, maybe you learned that one-on-one time is the way to deepen your relationships and build that extra connection with people. Because what did you learn? It doesn't have to be this specific like skill. Like it doesn't have to be, oh, I learned how to use Canva. I learned how to do XYZ. It can be, and I think that's a great thing to identify. But I also want you to check in on the other parts of life and see, okay, well, what did I learn about myself this month? Maybe you learned that you actually prefer one-on-one time rather than having so much group activity. Also, if you learned about any mindset shifts or personal growth, or Jenna's word, clarity. Well, what did you learn about clarity? What gave you that clarity? You said admiration for my husband, embracing my quirkiness and making me his passenger princess. That is yes. That's such an amazing thing too. I love that that shows like you are having such gratitude for someone in your life, because sometimes it takes that moment of, oh, I am a little quirky and this person accepts me as I am. And it doesn't matter how long you've been together. Sometimes you take it for granted and you're like, oh, okay, no, hold on. I am so grateful for you and all that you allow me to be. And that's a really important aspect too. So that answer is amazing. And as you're doing that too, I feel like both of those examples are great to realize like what new strengths or insights came through of them. Oh my gosh, congratulations. Wait, that is worth celebrating. That's incredible. That's absolutely amazing. Wow. Oh, I feel like you could also take like, what have you learned in this past 25 years? Or is there any like top thing that resonates with you? And that would be another way to approach this question as well. Whatever really helps you feel most aligned and ready to reflect, you know? So another example, thank you guys so much for sharing these examples with me. I love this engagement and I really appreciate it. I think another thing I've learned is that in June, I really learned to trust myself more. That can be something that comes over time, and you really have to be intentional about it because it's hard to have that confidence in yourself. And that's really what it comes down to when it comes to trust. It's confidence and belief. We survived. We shut out the outside noise. That is fabulous advice. You have to shut out that outside noise. And that's really cool too, because that really shows that you value each other. And it's because at the end of the day, the only people's opinions that should matter are you and his at the end of the day. So that's incredible. And that's really good advice for anyone. And I think that also ties into what we're talking about a little bit, because if learning to trust yourself, it also means you have to let go of that outside noise. And that's why I like it when you guys share these things too with me, because it also reveals extra insight into different answers. Sarah said, making the bubble comfy and fun. I absolutely love a bubble, to be honest with you. And that is such an important part. And I'm so excited to hear that, Sarah, because one thing I think that it's easy to do is always focus on something else in terms of where am I going next? What am I going to do next? And it sounds to me that you're learning that you can have such joy and love where you're at without it having to be running all over the place. It's to sit back and enjoy the place you're in. And that is absolutely incredible to hear. I want to add that in as well because I think that that's such a highlight. And I think all of those answers, it's funny how there is a connection point with everything that we're learning on here today. Because you can learn to trust yourself, and the way you do that is by shutting off the noise. And part of that also includes loving where you're at, or appreciating, I would say. Recognizing my bubble is actually amazing. And I'm not saying you should never step out of it, because yes, it is great. Like, we all sometimes need a little getaway. We all got to try something new, but it's important on the day-to-day aspect to really enjoy the space you take up and where you are. And the next question, now we've covered a lot, okay? So these are really in-depth questions designed for you to take it to that extra level. And the next question is going to have you take what you learned, what your favorite moments were and how you felt, and recognize next, what were the most challenging aspects of your month and how did you deal with them? Hey, Galena. So this is not our new planner yet. This is our monthly reflection for June. We are going to be using tomorrow's live to set up the July trackers and monthly layouts. Right now, we are really focusing on going over and setting up our monthly reflections together. Now, what you learned might have to be with how you handled whatever it is that you learned. What you learned, you might have learned through that challenging aspect. And so I want to ask you guys, what stretched you this month and when you're answering these questions? What did you learn from the discomfort or the difficulty? But also, how did you respond? And I want you to recognize if that was maybe the best course of response or if there is a change you would have done next time. But I don't want you guys to let this question stress you out and instantly go to the negative of it, because challenges are where we are going to build that self-trust and also resilience. There is that saying that you really grow when you're uncomfortable, or there's discomfort in growth. However you want to phrase that saying, and it's true. If it's something you're extremely comfortable in, if it's something that you have done day after day, maybe it's not that challenging anymore. So maybe you have to tweak it to start having that discomfort back. So for example, there so is discomfort in growth. Yes. Because if otherwise, are you growing if you're comfortable? And I'm not saying you need to go through life being uncomfortable all the time, because that's also not healthy. But when it comes to certain parts of your life at different times, that's when you're going to find the discomfort. So for instance, we had the wedding anniversary for 25 years of marriage. I am sure when that first started that there was probably some discomfort, right? Like, nothing is always just diving in and you got it. And that's because you're growing. Sonia, I fixed relationships and also lost relationships that were just a lot on my mental health. Yes. And that's so important to recognize, is that healthy relationships, they might start off a little uncomfortable, but in such a positive way, in terms of you have to learn how to communicate with this person. You have to learn if this person is going to help you long term. But there is going to be that difference between uncomfortability and knowing that this is not the path that's meant for you, or knowing when this is a challenge that's really worth putting yourself into, So being able to recognize those different aspects are so important. And I also wanted to bring it to our goal for the month, which was focusing a lot on our routine in terms of evening and movement. And so if you are looking to reflect on building that routine or building whatever goal you are working on, it might have been some moments that were overwhelming. Because it's sometimes can be really hard to get all of your goals checked off on a weekly basis. And maybe that was a little hard, you know? The relationship I ended was a 15-year friendship that ended up being better off done. And that happens. And it's really hard to go through. But I'm also so proud of you for being ready to let it go, because once you let that go, you are creating so much more space for growth, because that's one less thing that needs to be weighing you down. In terms of weighing you down, what can also be weighing down on you might be that to-do list or those daily routines you're trying to establish, and finding out what's really helping you and what's kind of holding you back. And so that's what I've been trying to work on with my daily routine through the past couple months, because nothing changes overnight. It always takes a little bit of time. And so there were, of course, days when I just felt overwhelmed and my routine did get thrown off. But instead of, what is another phrase? Instead of being really hard on myself, that's the word I'm looking for. I gave myself permission to do what needed to be done. Forgiving, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Jenna. But I'm proud of you for taking that step, because it's so important that we are moving through it, growing on the other side. And that is a challenge that you overcame, but it's also something you learn too. And that's what this reflection is all about. It's recognizing, you know what, that was really hard, but here's how I handled it. And I also learned this from this experience. Because then if it ever were to happen again, it might look a little different in terms of it being a specific person or how that routine is looking, for instance. But you're going to know that you've handled this before and you have a strategy that might help you moving forward. So list that strategy: setting boundaries, recognizing what's no longer serving you. And that'll help you move forward with purpose and intention when you're handling a challenge. Now, the next 4 questions, these are really going to be a little different. So these are going to focus more on your goals and your growth in relationship to them. And so it's important here that you are checking back on your umbrella goal planning and seeing what's going on and seeing how you are growing. Yes. Absolutely, Jenna. We read the Set Boundaries, Find Peace book one month for One More Chapter book club, and that was such a huge takeaway. The question number 5 is going to be a chance for you to reflect on this month's pathway focus. Why did you choose these pathways? Because you can choose more than one if you would like. And so when you're doing this, I want you to put yourself back into the shoes of when you were first setting up your monthly reflection and why you chose it. So maybe it was an area of your life that just needed a little more love or energy, or you also want to reconnect on maybe there was an intention that guided you through the month. So for instance, we focused a lot on our health and wellness routine. So specifically health and wellness. And the reason we did this was because we noticed towards the end of May, or towards probably the halfway through, it was becoming a little more challenging to get that daily movement in. So we needed to get back to our intention of why we were choosing to focus on this routine. And so we chose health and wellness, again, the movement routine. Yes, it was to build up that consistency again, but it was also because we noticed that that was really something that was important on a daily basis, is to get outside. Specifically, the movement was oftentimes to spend some time outside, especially as the weather got nicer, because that is truly something that brings joy and allows us all to feel better in all parts of ourselves. And then you're also going to find question 6. Now, this is going to ask you to reflect on your monthly and weekly action items. Did you incorporate them into your daily schedule? You need to notice how or what went well this month for you. What worked well in terms of how you were able to schedule them in? Did you do something differently? Also, it has to do with the follow through and if you were holding yourself accountable. Because if something didn't work, I also want you to recognize what you learned from it. So let's say, for instance, you had set up a routine, right, where you wanted to wake up at, let's be extreme here. Let's say you wanted to wake up at 5 a.m. every day. Well, maybe that was your weekly action item, but you realized that that's not going to work for you. So you learned that, okay, I have this certain time that I'm willing to get up every day, but it's not 5 a.m. because that does not work for you. And that's the important part when it comes to routines or really any goal in general, is learning through experience what works and what doesn't work, because all of us are so different. So for me, I found that yes, I was able to incorporate my daily routine, weekly action items. And I also wanted to know why. So the reason why was really because it became a priority. So oftentimes we can slip with our goals when we're not prioritizing them. And sometimes that's okay. But in this instance, it wasn't going to continue that way, and I didn't want it to. So I really honed in on the priority aspect and being so intentional about it. Because there is that like overuse saying nowadays where it's like, if you wanted to, you would. And I hate to say it, but a lot of times it's true. Okay. And then the next question is going to be an overall umbrella goal reflection. So, reflecting on your umbrella goal progress, how do you feel about reaching these goals? So, you're going to look back at your umbrella goals and see what goals, starting with the one that you focused on this month, how is it going? Are you making progress at a decent rate? So, let's start with our health and wellness. I like to do these as bullet points, like in terms of I go health and wellness, and then I do an arrow. And I'm going to write that I am establishing a daily routine that suits me. Because that is ultimately my umbrella goal, is I want this routine to last. I'm enjoying the process, or I'm enjoying the routine itself. So I am confident with reaching this goal. Now, maybe you look back and when you take a look at these, maybe you notice something that isn't making as much progress. Maybe your 24 books feels out of reach right now. Okay, what do you want to do about it? Maybe you haven't spent as much quality time to strengthen the bonds as you want. Okay, is that a priority then? Identifying what goals truly matter to you is how you are going to start to be more purposeful when it comes to the goal setting itself and recognizing the goals you actually want versus the ones you thought you wanted. Okay? And then the last question that is going to wrap up our monthly reflection is what changes, if any, do you want to make moving forward? So maybe there's something that you are ready to let go of. Maybe there's a different pathway you wanted to focus on. Is it personal development? Is it financial fitness? For me, I really need to hone in on my fitness routine because we've done a lot of movement, which is fabulous but I've focused less on like the actual fitness portion of it in terms of the building strength because I started off with that and I've lost sight of my goal with that. But it's something I want to incorporate and it's something that I want to do because it does matter to me. I just haven't figured out the best way to incorporate it into my routine yet. So specifically figuring out how to add strength into my routine. And that, you guys, is how you are going to take the time every month to sit down with your monthly reflection and make sure you are aware of how your month went and how you want the next month to look moving forward. I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining me today for both our plan with me and now our monthly reflection. These have been such an incredible time with you. I will be back on later for another amazing Define Showcase. So until then, continue to navigate each day with purpose. Thank you guys so much for being on with me. Bye, you guys.